what you're listening today, girls. I feel a little conflicted, but hopeful that this subject matter will be stirring, but helpful for so many involved in step-parent relationships. Whether you're a child or a step-parent, whether you're a child of a step-parent or you are a step-parent, please keep listening and be prayerful as you hear this testimony and insight. And even if you're not in that situation, this could be helpful to those that have friends or family members. And even just to know how to pray, Lord. We pray that today for these that are listening. So be prayerful as you hear this testimony. And I'd like to welcome Jenny Moshaw.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's funny you started off with talking about the people that could be impacted by this, because out of curiosity, I was wondering how many people are step parents or something. And the statistic is that over 60% of people either have a step parent or a stepchild or a step in-law, something along that. But over 60% of people have some sort of step relationship in their life. And that was higher than I thought it would be. So I was thinking this is a really relevant topic. So
yeah, for sure. So Jenny, why don't you most girls would never know Miss Jenny's background unless maybe you heard a little of her podcast from years ago. But why don't you give us a little background and tell us a little bit about your childhood and your parents?
Okay, so I was born in the 70s to my mom. My biological dad wasn't in the picture, but she married my first stepdad.
But you never knew your...
No, I still don't know him. I know his name, but I've never met him. Yeah. So that's biological dad absent. So my mom married he was my first stepdad, but I was a little under 2 when they married. So for all intents and purposes, he really was, a dad to me. Since I didn't have a biological dad, and he was just my dad. And then he and my mom split when I was a teenager, and my mom married my second stepfather. And the two of us, I would say, never really formed a very close relationship. And then that marriage ended, and I didn't really talk to him too much after that. So that was a different stepfather relationship even than my first one. And then more recently, my mom has had a long-term boyfriend who became just a very dear father figure to me. And even though they recently ended their romantic relationship, I still consider him part of the family. And the kids still consider him a grandpa type figure and all of that. So that's kind of that portion of my family. And then my husband and I have been married for 30 years this year, which is wild. And we also have 3 grown daughters.
Crazy, Jenny.
I know, right?
So to help those listening, what did you understand? Now, girls, I want you to put on both. Remember, whether you're a step parent or a child, she's coming from a child's perspective. So I want you to listen to it as if you're listening to a child talk about this. So help those listening. What did you understand about step parents? And did you realize that they weren't your biological parent?
So I didn't at first, especially because my first stepdad came on the scene when I was just a very young child. So I called him dad, and he was my dad. And I used his last name, although later I found out there was never any legal documentation made for that. He never officially adopted me or anything. I was just using his last name. So then I had to revert back to my mom's maiden name, which I had never used before. All that to say, I got a lot of last names. But when I was a child, I didn't understand that. So when I was like 7 or 8, my mom sat me down and she told me that the dad that I'd grown up with wasn't my biological dad. And honestly, that really confused me. And this is going to be so funny. Mostly, my confusion stemmed from the fact that she let me watch The Young and the Restless with her when I was a kid. And there was a storyline about a kidnapped baby. So as she was telling me that my dad wasn't really my dad, I assumed that she was telling me that I had been kidnapped.
Oh, goodness.
So that kind of just gives you an idea of how wonky the thought process of a child can be when it comes to this kind of thing. But when she assured me that I was not, in fact, kidnapped, I started trying to make sense of the whole stepfather thing. And I got to say, to his credit, he just kept being my dad, just as he always had. So that really wasn't the biggest adjustment for me.
But through the lens of a child, did you feel like it was handled well? Like, I am certain those listening have done all kinds of things. Told the child from the beginning, told the child in the middle. Like, wonder what brought it up that your mom would tell you at that age she felt like maybe you could understand at that age?
I think that that's probably what it is. And I know, nowadays the thought behind it is that it's often better to wait until the child begins to ask questions. But I feel like it's really easy for us to kind of slip into, oh, well, that's the way you're supposed to do it.
Right,
so that
for
means
sure.
It wasn't done the right way with me. But I honestly I think it was probably really hard for my mom. And I think she probably practiced that conversation over and over in her head. And she probably laid up nights wondering how she was going to say it. And I really believe in my heart that she did the absolute best thing that she knew how to do. Was it confusing? Yes, but it's a confusing situation. So I just have grace for my mom. I feel for her, thinking that must have been really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I guess what we're saying is, girls, there's all different kinds of ways to do it. In every one of these relationship situations that we're talking about this summer, you have to be prayerful.
Yes, that's 100%.
So what are a few things that you feel were handled well, and what were a few things you would handle differently? Not that they were handled poorly, but and we all say if we knew better, we would do better. So there's no judgment here.
There's really not. And honestly, I've had step-parent relationships literally my entire life. So I come at it with 50 plus years of perspective. And so I just have grace for everyone. Honestly, like, they were some of the step situations were harder than others, but everyone was just a flawed person trying to make their way. And so I just have grace for the entire situation. So if you are a step parent listening, just know that if you are step parenting a young child and things aren't going well, just hang on, just wait. They'll grow up too, believe it or not.
And have a little perspective.
Yes. But as for me, especially with my first stepdad, things didn't really change too much with that relationship until my parents divorced. And then there was a massive custody battle for my brother, who was my dad's biological son. And there was none for me. Like, I just went with my mom. And so that's when I started to really feel like, oh, this stepchild thing, like, this really is pretty different. But
And you were how old?
I
when
was
he left?
13 when their marriage
Which
ended.
is also a little bit of a difficult time in life.
So things they did right. I would say with my dad, my first stepdad, he was just my dad. He was my dad since I was really little, and I didn't have any memories where he wasn't my dad. So I feel like he did a really good job of just consistently being dad. He never said, now I'm your stepdad. He just was my dad. So for a very young child, for me, that was something that he did really well. And then my second stepdad came on the scene when I was a teenager. And he was good about giving me space and not being overbearing or trying to take the place of my dad.
Your first stepdad.
Of my first stepdad.
Okay.
He just kind of stepped back a little bit. So I would say he was good about that. And even though my mom didn't legally marry her last boyfriend, I do give a lot of credit to him for really being an excellent stepdad / father figure to a grown adult. And he was and still is very intentional about forming his own relationship with me outside of the one he had with my mom. So like he didn't just deal and talk to me when I was around my mom. He also reached out and talked and texted and called me when it was just him. And I felt like he chose not just my mom, but he also chose my brother and I as well. And yeah.
That's huge.
Very thankful for him.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, here are some things that could have really helped. And I think hopefully if you're a step parent and you're hearing this, it can be helpful to you. So I think the best thing that was lacking that I feel like would have been really helpful is if my stepfathers would have loved my mom really well. And what I mean by that is that stepkids have an allegiance and are protective of their biological parents. And so it's very difficult to win the trust of a child if you're not loving the parent in the way they deserve. So I think as a step parent, you have to be really careful about your attitude towards your spouse, especially around their children. It may not seem fair, but you're not going to be able to, complain probably even jokingly about their parent to them because there's just a protectiveness there.
Right.
And I would also say that actively working on keeping your marriage as healthy as possible will be a benefit, obviously not only to you and to your children if you have any, but also to the stepchildren as well. So loving the spouse well is very important. Loving the stepchild's biological parent well is really important. Another thing kind of goes without saying, but it played a huge role in my life, is to avoid substance abuse. Work every day to be the best, healthiest version of yourself. Introducing any kind of substance abuse into a family can be catastrophic. And that's kind of like, family 101, but in a step relationship, I feel like it's even elevated a level.
Right.
And then just being really careful not to betray a trust. I've said before, like whether it's fair or not, step parents are often held to a higher standard of conduct. So while someone may easily forgive their biological parent for something, it may take infinitely longer to forgive a step parent for the exact same offense.
Right. Oh, that's good, girl. Yeah, that's really good. So even after this is kind of a backup question, even after your first stepdad left the relationship, he still stayed in your life.
He did, yes.
Even though he was fighting for the custody of his son.
Right.
But he still, and was your mom okay with that?
To an extent, they separated under stressful, awful, conditions. And there was, like I said, some trust broken and some animosity. And so I left that relationship to being very angry at him. So it took a while to kind of just get over all of that.
Okay. Ooh, it is a lot.
Sorry.
How? No. Friend, this is real life.
Yeah.
I mean, this is those things that we need help with as believers, especially. How, if any, did this affect your view of God?
Right. Well, to be honest, viewing God as a father was, and sometimes still is, a little bit tricky for me. My experience with fathers on this side of heaven is that they're temporary and eventually they leave. And so that when people would talk about God as a father, it kind of did leave me scratching my head a little bit. And not carrying that idea into how I view God was hard at first. There used to be a song that was really popular, A Good, Good Father, and everyone loved it. Like, it's a beautiful song, but I would literally cringe because I just couldn't relate to it. If it came on the radio, I'd turn it off. But God has been so patient working through that with me. And I have to give a little shout out to my husband for being a good dad to our daughters. because it's really been very healing for me to watch them have a good relationship with their dad, and to see the way he cares for each of them has actually just kind of helped me kind of rebuild the idea of what a father is. And of course, God, Heavenly Father, just being there for me, I think, is the biggest thing through all the years and all the mistakes I've made and ugliness, and the fact that he still so diligently shows up for me. That's also very healing.
This isn't something we talked about before, and the interesting part to the piece that Clint is a good father is he was only raised with a stepfather, right?
No, he had a biological father, but when that marriage ended, he just left, and Clint didn't have him in his life at all. And then his mom remarried, and his stepdad actually adopted him. So he is his dad.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking girls that are listening who maybe they're not the step parent, right? But their husbands are.
Mm-hmm.
To understand that God can do that in a man's life.
Absolutely.
Like he can be a good father even if he didn't have
absolutely
no one has a perfect father, but a perfect earthly father. If that was a different, because he was, has a really good relationship with his stepdad.
So great.
And out of that is a good father himself.
Absolutely.
So there's hope, girls. Don't
100%.
Look at your husband as a stepdad and think that he can't be a good father to your kids, because he can.
Yes.
And you guys are such an example of that. So now let's reverse that. So now, after following Jesus, how did it affect your view of your step parents? And did you ask God to change your heart? And was it more a natural process, which you kind of talked about that a little bit, but meaning the more you knew the Lord, it just happened naturally?
Right. Well, I say it was both, honestly.
Okay.
I had a lot of forgiving to do with the first two stepdads, and even my biological dad, just for being absent. And that all took a long time. It wasn't, I decided in my heart that I was going to seek to forgive them, but it was kind of it was more like peeling an onion. Like there was always little layers. And even to this day, there's little layers that come up like, oh, I have not forgiven that person of that yet. And I'll have to go through the steps and ask God again to help me. But it took time for me to know and understand all that Jesus did for me, and time to come to the realization that true forgiveness literally benefits everyone, like myself and my children and my husband. They all benefit from me not holding unforgiveness in my heart towards my stepdad, if that makes sense. Like, just is such a little bit of forgiveness, the ripple effect of it is just so vast. I think age brings some perspective to how hard life is for everyone and how flawed and imperfect we all are. For me, a lot of unforgiveness was wrapped up in expectation, that I expected that some of my stepdads should have been better or done more or been different, and forgiving them for not being who I thought they should have been, and just accepting them for who they actually were, really brought a lot of freedom to me.
Yeah, for sure. And the other side of that is, even if they had been your biological dad, they still would have disappointed you.
Oh, absolutely. Just I myself have disappointed my own children.
Right. But sometimes we think, oh, it's because they're the step parent, or if it was my real dad, or if it was my real mom. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
I never had a step parent, but some of my aunts are actually step parents. And I have no doubt that those who are listening who have childhood wounds or are currently a step parent and feel inadequate in navigating relationship, I know there's all of those things, right? That we all have those things. Yeah. But what verse or word from the Lord could you offer them?
Well,
I know that's a big thing.
it is, and I'm kind of chuckling because it may not be like one that you think of, but honestly, Exodus 20:12, honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God commanded you, that your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. So I would say if you have a childhood wound.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. Maybe that step-parent's not even any longer alive.
Right.
So that you can't mend or offer forgiveness to someone if they wanted to,
Yeah, I would say forgive, respect, and honor. Honoring our parents really doesn't have very much to do with whether or not we believe that they deserve it. And it has everything to do with obeying God and what he tells us to do. I believe one way we honor our parents, like in that verse, is to honor the decision about who they want to spend their life with and what that relationship looks like. And when they choose to end it, we have to respect that too. I used to kind of skirt around the idea that, I don't have to really respect and forgive and honor my step-parents because they're not my real dad.
Right. Well, and that's what the world will tell you.
Yes.
And that you don't even have to respect or honor your biological parents.
Yeah, God does not tell us that. So God is very direct. And honestly, once you kind of quit kicking and screaming about all the ways that you think it's not right and you just accept that he's God and he's always right, it just is so much easier.
Yeah, for sure.
But I learned really that we can trust God to bring good from our obedience to forgive and respect our parents and step-parents, even if we don't know why or how. We can trust him to bring good just from the act of obedience. Whether we see anything like that here on earth, maybe we will, maybe we won't, but we know that God has told us to do that, and he has a promise for us if we do. So even if we want to kick and scream and shout all the ways they don't deserve it, at the end of the day, God says to honor our parents, and by degree, that also, I believe, includes step-parents. So,
okay, and to that one that's feeling inadequate navigating as a step-parent.
Oh, yeah, and you asked me, too, about what if the step-parent is gone?
Gone, yeah.
Right. And I would say that you can still respect them because you are the keeper of their memory and the stories. And so just kind of be careful in choosing which stories you share with others. And I'm not saying to lie or to pretend that they were someone that they weren't or to sugarcoat who they were. But you can stretch yourself to look at them with some grace and try to recall some of the good things too. And I think that can be a very honoring way to respect a step-parent that is not here anymore.
And you've had to do that even this last year.
Yes, I did lose both my dad and my second stepdad in the year, and then my mom's relationship ended with my third stepdad. So it was a year of loss last year for sure. But just kind of learning to trust God even in that loss has been a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you are a step-parent and you are feeling inadequate, I would just say to trust that God put you in the family you're in with the kids that are there for a reason and just for this exact time, to try not to second guess God. Hopefully you've entered into this marriage prayerfully and all of that. But even if you haven't, God will be in the midst of your family and what it looks like right now. And you can pray and ask him what your role is supposed to look like, because it might not look like what you thought it was going to look like. And it might not look like what your friends or your neighbors, or definitely not what you see on TV. Just from my own experience having stepdads at different ages, I can say that the roles they played were different. I was the same kid, but we had different relationships with each of them. Like, for instance, if you become a step-parent to a very young child, you might be stretched to take on a more parental role, especially if the biological parent is not around. And you may need to just pray about what that looks like. Or you might become a step parent to a young child who maybe doesn't act like you thought your kids would act. And you may struggle with consistency if you're co-parenting with someone you've never met. If their biological parent is in the picture and you're now having to try to co-parent with them. Or you may have a teenager who acts like they hate you. Like,
right,
that's
for
a thing.
sure.
An adult child who refuses to speak to you. And you may have thought your role was one thing, but instead, God may be showing you that it's something else. And maybe your role is to model love that doesn't walk away from conflict or silence. Or maybe it's to support the biological parents. Maybe it's not so much about you at all as much as supporting the biological parents. But it's always, always to show the love of Christ. But that may look different for anyone.
And I love that little thing that you just said where you said, it might not be about us at all. Which is what we think. It's all about us, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about those that are around you, I love that.
Yeah.
I love the verse, Psalm 9:10. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. And I think sometimes we don't have any idea why the Lord allows us in different and often complicated relationships. But it certainly gives us opportunities to seek his face, to give everything to him, and still love others well. And I'm just thankful for that. If you have any last thoughts, and then would you close us in prayer, please?
Yeah, I just would like to encourage you that God has a role for you where you are right now, and you can seek him and find out what it is. And I think the first step is just laying to rest your own expectation of what you thought your step family would look like, and trust God with what it actually is. And you can never, ever go wrong with seeking the Lord first and building your own character. So if you are at your wit's end and you don't know what to do with this step-family relationship, no matter what end of it you're on, just go back to seeking the Lord first, building your own character, and letting things go from there. That would kind of be my last thing that I would advise you to do. But yeah, can I pray us out?
Yes, of course.
Heavenly Father, I just thank you that you are the one who made families, Lord. You made them to bless us, to go forth on the earth as a strong unit. And especially in our day and age, Lord, those families look really different for all of us. And we trust that you are at work in all of our families. We trust that you have good things in store for us. We trust that you haven't made a mistake by putting us in the families that you've put us in, Lord. I pray you would just embolden us to just put aside our own expectations, Lord, and instead put our expectant hope in you and what you have for us, Lord. Help us to sacrifice the things that we feel like we deserve and as our right and all of that. Help us just lay that aside, God, and give it to you and focus on what you say is right and what you say we deserve, Lord.
Yes, Jesus.
I just pray that you would bless all of these ladies listening. If there are hurts, Lord, help them work through them, bind them up, Lord. Help them go out stronger than when they first sat down to listen to this. And God, I just thank you. I thank you for my own, all the people that you've put into my life in different sorts of roles to help me understand a little bit more about you. And I praise you, Jesus, in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen. I don't want to embarrass Jenny, but girls, I know Miss Jenny and I spend a lot of time together, and we obviously know a lot of intimate things about each other's lives, and she was the perfect person to talk about this because she really is an example of someone who has some difficult family relationships, and yet she never lets that stop her from trying to make them better or trying to see how God could work in that situation. Lord, and I'm just so thankful for her. And I know that she'd be willing to talk to any of you.
Absolutely.
If you're in that situation and you just can't see your way to the end. So just so thankful. Okay, girls, bless you, and we'll see you next week.